Hello and welcome back to Aetheral Space 4.9. We're back.
Welcome. Sorry, I was taking a drink of water. I thought that intro would go longer.
Nice one.
Last time, so last time, Pierrot found Yaza was like, Marco's been compromised. There's a delay, just so you know. And then Pierrot was like, "Damn, I'm gonna fucking take care of this." And then he ran into the Knox twins, TM, who rhyme when they speak, and they're presumably about to fight. And then Bruno and Dragan like intimidated Lucia into giving him the info for how to like get through where they need to. He sent Bruno and Danny to go up there. Then he had a short conversation with Lucia, and she was like, "Hey, Pierrot's not so bad." And he was like, "Ugh, my prejudice." And then before he could apologize, she died, and that's where it ended.
Yeah.
So
what could have happened?
Yeah, Aetheral space. Who knows? Presumably she was attacked.
Mm.
She just had a heart attack. I knew I shouldn't have eaten the French fries. All right. Do they have French fries still in Aetheral space? How long has it been since France was a thing?
Yeah, but they're called Mites fries in the Supremacy.
Mighty number 9 fries. Dragan left behind a nearby container, body moving almost automatically in a desperate scramble to survive. And it was a good thing, too, as a second later, the spot he'd been standing was blasted with another bolt of red light. Panting for breath, Dragan stared with wide eyes at the corpse of Lucia Yet. The woman had fallen forward onto her face, her limbs splayed out, smoke rising from the hole in her torso, the hole that went all the way through her body. For a second, Dragan was deliriously reminded of a donut, and it was all he could do to hold back the bile. "You've got mighty fine reflexes there, boy," a male voice called out, their drawling voice echoing through the hangar. "I was sure I'd get you with that second shot." Dragan cleared his throat, doing his best not to let any fear escape into his tone, and replied, "If you're looking for this ship's crew, you're in the wrong place. I was just a prisoner here. I've no quarrel with the Supremacy." There was a low chuckle, yeah. I presume. Indignant, just slightly, as if Dragan had said something utterly absurd. "No quarrel?" The man called out, and just under the voice, Dragan could hear something, some hum. "That's a hell of a thing to say, Dragan Hadrien." Fuck. "You know me?" As Dragan spoke, he did his best to listen to that hum, to figure out just what he was hearing. Some kind of machine, certainly, but what? "You kidding?" The hum increased in volume, just the tiniest bit as the man spoke. "You think they don't run the faces of traitors like you on the news, boy? You think you can just betray the Supremacy and get away with it? Isn't their whole thing like, if you can kill the leader, you get to be him?"
Yeah, but that's within the Supremacy.
Right. I don't
also,
think
if you
so.
kill the leader
no,
and win, if you were to kill the leader and win, you're not a traitor, you're the new leader.
Of course. "I don't think so, no, sir. I won't allow it." Dragan gulped. He knew what that hum was. A hover platform, usually used by political officials to give impromptu speeches, or by snipers looking for a makeshift vantage point. His enemy had the advantage in mobility then, and whatever the gun he'd used was, it was doubtless much more powerful than Dragan's little pistol. "You're here for me, then?" Dragan said, and despite his best efforts, croaking anxiety infiltrated his voice. "None of your damn business what we're here for, boy," the man said, his voice getting slightly louder as the platform came closer. He was looking for a better shooting angle, then. "But it sure as hell ain't you. Don't go flattering yourself. Killing you's just my moral obligation. You understand? When a man sees a rat, he puts his boot down on it. That's what makes him a man." Dragan winced. From the way this guy was talking, he was obviously a true believer. Killing him was based on the principle of the thing, rather than any personal grievance. He'd probably get along quite well with the toy Muzazi. Dragan understood idiots like this pretty well now. There'd be no bargaining here. Still, a little pleading never hurt anyone. "Listen," he said, eyes flicking around to look for the nearest exit. "You know my name already. What's yours? It's only right we know that about each other. It's only honorable." The man paused, and the tone of the hum shifted to indicate the platform had ceased moving. If Dragan's instincts were accurate, the enemy would be in a position within his range. If he jumped out of cover, he could get his shot off. Slowly, quietly, he pulled his plasma pistol out of its holster. "My name is Darren Roche!" the man cried, and at the same time there was the sound of a plasma round being loaded into a gun. "Savor it! It's the last name you'll ever hear!" Dragan leapt out of cover, pistol in hand, and fired off a flurry of plasma shots at Roche's position. And then, clever, get the villain to reveal his name so you can start using it when describing him in the narration. And then, before the smoke even stopped pouring from the gun, he turned on his heel and charged for the door. This guy had assault hardware way beyond Dragan's capabilities, sorry. It was naive to think he could be killed so easily. The purpose of this attack, then, was distraction, creating the opportunity for Dragan to retreat and plan. It occurred to Dragan as he ran that he hadn't even really seen his opponent yet, only the vaguest glimpse of an armored, long-haired figure on a floating platform as he'd fired. That was fine, though. That was absolutely fine. Dragan would be very happy if he never had a reason to get a more detailed look at this man. "Coward!" Roche roared from behind Dragan. Clearly, the distraction hadn't been sufficient. A second later, just as Dragan reached the doors, he heard the sound of rapid-fire plasma shots, and he knew that it was only luck that had saved him from being incinerated by the blasts of red light. Whatever strengths this Roche guy had, accuracy wasn't one of them. 3 of the shots sailed over Dragan's head to strike the far wall instead, and the 4th was seamlessly absorbed into his Gemini shotgun. He had something to work with, then. Dragan's aether flared around him, recording the shot, and as it did, he could sort of feel the composition of it, understand how it was put together. This wasn't standard plasma for a rifle like that. It was fightercraft grade, meant to be used for air assaults on entrenched positions. Using it here, in this situation, was the definition of overkill. So now he had one good shot against Roche's rapid-fire equivalent. Fantastic. Dragan's shoes squeaked against the floor as he whirled around the corner, narrowly avoiding another burst of red plasma fire. He had to keep moving. This Roche character was obviously fixated on him. He'd keep chasing him until one of them was dead. Why were there so many damn hallways on this ship? Dragan's eyes flicked around as he sprinted through the halls, trying to take in any landmarks they could. He was fairly certain the way he'd ran was taking him further away than Bruno, which wasn't great, but if he stopped to try and correct that, he was as good as dead anyway. The hallway split in two, one fork heading right, the other left. Dragan's eyes focused on the flickering display on the left side. Training quarters. Exactly what he needed. An open space in which he could arrange some kind of ambush. That kind of trickery was the only way he could win this. A plan already forming in his head, Dragan charged around the corner and collided full-on with the person who was coming around the other side, knocking the two of them roughly to the ground. It was a girl with short black hair wearing an underman's uniform. She put a hand to her head where she'd fallen and groaned. Her script lay broken on the ground before her. Dragan could have screamed. He was running for his life from the supremacy and he still couldn't escape from the UAP either? No, it didn't matter. He could hear the hum of the platform rushing through the hallways towards them. Without a moment of apology or even introduction, Dragan reached out, snatched the girl's wrist, and screamed, "Fucking run!" Alright, and then I'll popcorn it to you.
Yeah, no worries. He loves the young people. The widow sighed wistfully as she punched one of them in the face. The smaller of the Knox sisters staggered backwards, only avoiding being frozen to the wall by the timely push of their counterparts. The size difference between the siblings Knox was minuscule, of course, but there was no other method for the widow to differentiate them. The hallway had become a tunnel of pure ice, frosty blue aether radiating from the widow's body and adjusting the temperature of the surroundings. Even the dust in the air had frozen over, creating a constant swirling of what looked just like snow. The widow found that she brought home wherever she went. The Knox twins were doing quite well for themselves, all things considered. Most people who thought the widow ended up dead by the 2-minute mark, but this duo were now approaching 3 minutes without much in terms of grievous injury. The widow wasn't going all out yet, of course, but it was still impressive. The fact that they hadn't yet been killed didn't mean they were winning, though. The swings of the sickles they held in each hand were wide arcs, easy to predict, and so easy to dodge or block at the widow's leisure. The smaller twins circled around her, aiming for the widow's back, only for the blow to be deflected by a pillar of ice that sprouted right up from the floor. At the same time, the widow kicked the cane that had fallen at her feet up into the air, blocking the other sister's frontal assault, and sending her flying backwards. The widow glanced up at the lone surviving security camera, the rest had become ice sculptures, and smiled faintly. Captain Piero had retreated into Langston's office when the fight had begun, but she had no doubt he was watching through the script. He seemed to think this engagement was some kind of audition, after all. That in itself was vexing. The widow didn't fight for anything but Adrust anymore, and certainly not for this Jean Perot. As if in sympathy with her irritation, the air immediately surrounding the widow grew even colder, forcing the Knox sisters to retreat to avoid becoming frozen in place. They landed side by side at the end of the hallway, having slid over the frozen walls like ice skaters, the chest quickly rising and falling with ragged breaths. The widow tapped her cane against the ground. "You are very talented young ladies, yes, very talented. But if you continue like this, I'm afraid there's a good chance you will be dying. That would be a shame, seeing as you finally stopped rhyming." The Knox sisters...
Hey, she rhymed!
Crap God. The Knox sisters glared down the hallway at her, their body language betraying nothing. Wonderful, just what the widow would expect from aspiring assassins. "So," the widow wagged a thin, bony finger as she spoke, "I'm going to give you a chance, as I've grown soft in my golden years. If you can escape from this frozen tunnel, I will not pursue you. A good deal, yes? You keep your lies, and you've learnt a valuable lesson. In twin flashes of red aether, the two girls rushed down the hallway towards the widow, sickles bared like bestial claws. The speed was astonishing, but, as the widow already knew, insufficient. The old woman sighed. Well, I can appreciate not wanting to disgrace yourselves, but this is a little far to go for your pride, yes? If you insist, though. Ice formed on the tips of the widow's fingers, creating long, sharp claws, short up enough to pluck a beating heart from a young chest without too much problem. She'd go for the young one first, she decided. From what she'd observed in the past, older siblings usually grew more predictable in their rage once the younger was dispatched. The more gruesome the device, the more useful that drive for immediate vengeance. The sisters reached her, slashing with their sickles, the younger one aiming for her legs, while the older one went straight for the widow's skulls. Distraction hadn't worked, it seemed, so their final strategy was to dispatch her with overwhelming force. A shame. She'd expected better. The widow lunged forward with nightmarish speed, her claws piercing the younger sister's chest with a resounding crack of the ribs, only to find themselves stuck. The younger sister had frozen in place, not by ice, but by the fact that she'd become an obsidian-black statue from her skin to her clothes. Even the blood that had spurted out from the newborn wound was frozen, red droplets turned black and fixed into the air. The widow was so surprised...
Are all these powers, the widow included, still Aether, or are these separate abilities?
These are all Aether, yes.
Okay.
The widow was so surprised she must have neglected to duck under the older sister's slash, but in the end, of course, she did, sending her flying with a kick for good measure. Still, this was a problem. The younger sister had completely transmuted her body into durable black stone, and the widow's hand was still wedged inside, unable to pull itself free. She had effectively been immobilized. Well, she smiled as the older sister ran back towards her. This certainly is interesting. Popcorn?
Report! Roche's gruff voice came over the communicator, distorted just slightly by the weak connection and the ever-present hum, I assume, of his transport platform. Niles fumbled for the script in front of her, planting it against her ear. She stammered. Hadrien's moving through the training facilities now. He's got someone with him. I don't know who. I think he might be thinking of maybe doing an ambush on you? The explanation was clumsy, unprofessional, and it took Rose a few seconds to respond with his usual grunt. The second the command... Wait, is the girl Dragan took, working with him?
No. Well, Dragan would know about it if it was, 'cause...
That'd be so funny. She's just, casually revealing his plans. The explanation was clumsy, unprofessional, and it took Roche a few seconds to respond with his usual grunt. The second the communicator clicked off again, Niles sighed with relief. She'd nestled herself into a far corner of the ventilation system, huddling up among what supplies she'd managed to bring on her cutter pod. Her script, her pistols, her glasses, it wasn't much, to tell the truth. Those glasses, perched on her nose, cracked with auburn aether, the lenses rippling with light like an oil slick as they adjusted to new information. She could see Hadrien, see him through the countless walls and ceilings that separated them, a glowing blue specter that shimmered and sparked as it ran. The other person was beside him, their aura transparent, barely even noticeable. She couldn't see Rose, she was no Aether user after all, but she planned to track her on him when they'd parted ways. She could pull his location up if she needed to. As she watched Hadrien run, her finger tracked his position on her script's map, ready to report his location if she needed to. More than anything else, she needed to prove to Roche that she was useful. It was the only way she'd make it out of this alive. The one who took out Jamie Pirot would live, and all others would die. That was what the instructor had said. Niles already knew she had no chance of assassinating such a man, he'd be too well guarded, and she was far too weak at any rate, but failure to do so would mean a gruesome death. She knew she'd have to cheat, to game the system, but Daphne would never have gone along with it. The older girl only cared about how much use she could get out of Niles, and now that her survival was a liability, she'd seek to end it as soon as possible. Even if Niles came up with a plan for the both of them to survive, there was no way Daphne would risk herself by carrying it out. Roche, on the other hand, was a man of honor. Even without Aether, he was skilled, well-armed. Even if he couldn't save her, he'd at least try. She'd made him promise, after all. Men like Darren Roche didn't break promises. It was her only chance. She could have screamed. How had she even ended up in this situation? What god had she pissed off to end up in this batch of recruits with this maniac instructing them? She was sure she'd never done anything that bad. Niles came from a family of special officers, father, mother, and all her siblings having fought for the supremacy at one point or another. Doing otherwise had never been an option for her. She'd never even entertained other options. Since the day she was born, she'd lived in a ruthless world of claws or teeth. She was weak. She knew that very well, but she could tell when someone else was weaker. Run while you can, Dragan Hadrien, she thought, tracking her quarry through the walls. Run while you can. Aren't they here to kill the captain? So, why does she care about killing Dragan?
Roche wants to kill Dragan because he's from America, and Niles wants to kill Dragan because Roche wants to kill Dragan, and she used Roche on her side.
That's why she's into it. There was something I was going to bring up that I wanted to wait till the end because I didn't want to interrupt. Let me see if I can remember. Oh, yeah. So I had a thought, right? Mm-hmm. Because if she's turned everything about her into obsidian, then she's kind of, like, basically not a person anymore. And then that's when I realized, oh, that's why they're twins. The other one can presumably break them out of it, right?
Oh, you found a nice spot.
That's what I was thinking. Because that feels like way too strong of a technique, but then I'm like, well, Tanhony usually keeps things somewhat biological, so if she's turned completely into obsidian, she probably can't turn herself back. So that's probably why they're twins. The other one would revert the transformation, so they can't both do it.
Yeah.
Which I thought was pretty cool. It kind of matches that whole rhyming schema they have, too, of like the back and forth with their battle style.
Yeah.
Alright, so that was a pretty good chapter. I'm hungry for more. This really was an Aetheral space.
We truly are the Aetheral space. Imagine being Dragan Hadrien and not knowing you're in a 2v1.
So I have a question for viewers. Obviously, I don't know how canon it would be, because ultimately it would be up to Tan, and it's not like it's made by us. But if you could pick a song to be the Aetheral space theme song, what would it be? Tell us down below in the comments, and maybe I'll go listen to them.
He probably will.
Yeah. I noticed, Hamilton, if you're listening, you've been commenting on some of the videos lately, which I sincerely appreciate. I know these ones don't get a lot of comments, so you can have my Kids' Choice Award for that one.
Thank you so much. And please don't neglect to comment on this one shortly.
Alright, guys. Bye.
Bye.